Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lambert, and on this channel we talk Kanye West. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the narrative of Jesus as King. And I'm excited because I think we have the concept, or the basic concept, down right now. In the upcoming weeks, we're going to be releasing our podcast episodes that are a much deeper analysis, where we go line by line, Travis and I, through the whole album, track by track, and really deconstruct what it's doing sonically, narratively, thematically, where you come away with way too much information than what you probably expected, hoped for, or wanted. But you'll definitely feel a mastery over Jesus as King when you listen to it. And this content is a little late. I was on my honeymoon for 2 weeks, and it was awesome. The trip was amazing, but it was during the release of Jesus is King. So I've had all this content that I've wanted to put out, but I just got back yesterday. So can finally start making videos on it, which excited about. So I thought we'd just go through the basic concept today, and then over the next few days and weeks, just be building on this foundation, getting into song rankings, specific song discussions, answering any questions about the album. So just to start off, for any of those that are just wanting the most basic information, as you can see in this article I wrote for Forbes, that the basic summary is that Jesus is King relies on a 5-1-5 structure, which is similar to Ye and Kids See Ghost having a 3-1-3 structure, where you have a first half that captures a state of being that's explored. On Ye and Kids See Ghost, it's this darkness that opens those albums before a pivot point in the middle causes a change in behavior or attitude or direction. So on Ye, what follows, what it leave are the beautiful thoughts. No Mistakes, where he's trying to do better. Ghost Town, where he's reborn. And then Violent Crimes, where he has this epiphany about how he's treated women and what his role is as a father caring for his daughter, right? And just, yeah. So then Kids See Ghosts is similar, where Kanye and Kid Cudi feel overwhelmed by their demons, but they finally, on Free, have this sense of self-mastery. And with that sense of mastery and this reconnection with their faith and religion, they're able to lessen the intensity of the demons and the effect that the demons have on them, which is what happens when you have Reborn, Kids See Ghosts, which Kids See Ghosts, the demons are just reduced to clouds moving around, right? Because they pale in comparison to the spirit, the real king, God. And then you have Cudi Montage, which really, really demonstrates that God is the thing, or God is the one helping to banish these demons. Lord, shine your light on me, save me, please. So Jesus is King has a similar structure, where you start off in this negative state of being, or a complicated state of being, before pivoting with everything we need, and then arriving finally at a clearer understanding of what being a Christian means and how Kanye needs to express his Christianity. So that's what ends up happening here across Sella through On God, is that first kind of negative state of being, then everything we need, the tipping point, into Water, all the way through Jesus is Lord. The cool thing about this is every hour and Jesus is Lord kind of serve as bookends. You can see in the article I kind of talked about every hour is a broader conceptual introduction that acts as a sort of prophecy. Sung by the Sunday service choir, the track instructs that one needs to sing till the power of the Lord comes down. The implication here is that the power of the Lord is not fully present in the life of the character. It must be summoned through this specific action. Sing every hour, every minute, every second. Sing each and every millisecond. So kind of the key thing in understanding this is sing till the power of the Lord comes down. And then you finally have the fulfillment here of Jesus is Lord, right? And it's Kanye feeling the power of the Lord and adding his voice to this choir of people that are singing for God every second, every minute. So in narrative, you tend to have a setup of something missing in the character's life, or a setup of a goal that they have to reach, and the end of the story is them either succeeding or failing to reach that goal, or some complicated middle ground, right? So I always go to Adam Sandler movies because they're kind of one of the simplest expressions of this. But you look at Happy Gilmore, and in Happy Gilmore, he has to make a certain amount of money to save his house, or his grandma's house, or his mom's house, something like that. So his basic need is just money. And how is he going to go about getting that? And by the end of the movie, he's achieved a certain level of success in the golf world to where he has the money to save the house. And that just repeats over and over. It can get deeper, more thoughtful in ways. You look at Fight Club, and the need of Edward Norton is some kind of catharsis or cleansing or clearing out of all the things that have been on his mind that are starting to keep him from sleep and break him down mentally, spiritually, physically. And that ends up happening through Tyler Durden, Brad Pitt, his other half, which leads him on this path of destruction and self-destruction until he's finally cleared out all of this bullshit from his life. So it's this wild ride to get to this point, but you start with him in the midst of all of this bullshit in order to arrive at a point where he's free from the bullshit. So here you start with this idea that Kanye needs to sing and be part of this group of people that are singing every hour for God to bring down the Lord's power. And he's not doing that well on these opening tracks until Everything We Need, he starts figuring it out. And it's after that that you get Water, God Is, Hands On, Use This Gospel, which are much more clearly and distinctly positive in their expression of faith. Like you look at Selah, there's still a lot of combativeness that plays out in that song, a lot of aggression. Kanye paints himself as a soldier of God, and he's ready to fight and battle. He talks about yelling at his driver at one point. There's still a lot of darkness to this track, despite him talking a lot of religious talk, right? He isn't necessarily walking the walk, which I think gets into some of the lines on Follow God, where Kanye is saying, lifelike, this is what your life like. Try to live your life right. Like he's trying to live his life right, but he's not quite getting there. Like it feels like a movie, it feels lifelike, but it's not what it's supposed to be. And the line that keeps repeating in this song is that he's screaming at his dad, and his dad's telling him that's not very Christ-like. So when you take away everything else and strip away everything else, the clear thing is that he's not acting like Christ. He's not practicing the thing that he values. There's a disconnect between his day-to-day life and his religious ideals, despite the proclamation of those ideals, which, I mean, you have him clearly say here, wrestling with God, I don't really want to wrestle. Like he doesn't want to be in this place, but he's in this place. And it's after admitting that he's wrestling with God that he says, man, it's really lifelike, everything in my life. So there's still something missing because he's still having this complicated relationship with God. And this is something that Kanye talked about during his Jesus is King experiences, that he thought he was doing a better job of being a Christian than he really was during the Life of Pablo period, right? He thought Life of Pablo was a gospel album, but was cussing the whole time, talking about sex the whole time. And it took him until this year to really realize that that wasn't anything close to a proper gospel album. So I think this is kind of, most Kanye albums cover the period of his life between the last album and the one that he's working on currently, and end up being dramatizations of that period of his life. Not autobiographies, right? But dramatizations. The same way that Moneyball is a dramatization of what happened with the Oakland Athletics. But it takes a lot of liberties. Same thing with The Social Network with Facebook, right? That's not an accurate depiction of what happened with Facebook, but it gets the general concepts right. But they change things for entertainment value. Kanye does the same thing. He's trying to make a point in dramatization, so there's a lot of hyperbolization and exaggeration that takes place just for the narrative effect, right? Like Kanye's never cheated on Kim, but he'll talk about having these side chicks and fucking other women and the bullshit of that in order to highlight how ego was getting the best of him and celebrity was getting the best of him. It's not that he did it, it's just this idea that he could do it and what that means. So just follow God really puts into perspective, especially following Sella, which seems so forceful and like, yeah, I got this, aren't I perfect? That no, his faith isn't being expressed as perfectly as he might think. And Closed on Sunday is one of the songs that's gotten the most flack from people, even Kanye fans, as the line, "Closed on Sundays, you're my Chick-fil-A, you're my number one with the lemonade," a lot of people think is just too cheesy, so absurd. But if we're viewing this part of the album as Kanye knowingly, as the artist, portraying himself having a poor expression of his faith, then the cheesiness of this line isn't just Kanye being a bad writer. It's Kanye showing the cheesiness of how he was expressing his faith and his idea of faith at that point. He wasn't reading the Bible as much, or he wasn't practicing the Bible as much. He thought, "You're my Chick-fil-A" was the appropriate use of Sunday, or description of, or what is it? Not description of, but reference to Sunday. Like, Sunday's the day so many people go to church. It's a day of rest, of faith. There's all these things to pick on or to point out or reference when talking about Sunday. And he talks about Chick-fil-A. Like, the absurdity of that line isn't something that Kanye missed, especially in this part of the album. He doesn't really have any lines like that on the rest of the album. So either he just did it here for the hell of it, or it's part of a deeper idea that he's trying to express, which I think is the case, in just showing the disconnect that he had with his religious expression at this point. And this song, like with Sella, is very defensive and very combative. And I think that there's really a difference. Typically, I think it's kind of a trope that violence and art are on two ends of the spectrum, because the more violent you are, the more physical you are, the less spiritual you are, and art's usually associated with the spiritual. So if you're being very physical and violent, you're less spiritually inclined, less artistically inclined. But if you're being more spiritual and artistic, then the less you promote violence and deal in violence. So the fact that so much of this first part of this album, not so much, but Sella and Closed on Sunday has this very combative sense to it, and these very combative, violent lyrics where Kanye's saying stuff like, "Strength in my hand, they will think twice before stepping onto my land. I draw the line that's written in the sand. Try me and you'll see that I ain't playing." Like, this is harshly aggressive for somebody that's trying to promote Jesus and be a vessel and be a saint and all of that. I got my weapons in the Spirit's land. Like, is God supposed to be a weapon? I mean, some might point to the Crusades and say yes, but I think most people would agree at this point that the Crusades were sort of ridiculous. They were very violent, and the violence just seems hypocritical in terms of what the goal of religion is, right? Especially Christianity and what Jesus was doing and promoting in his day-to-day life. So Closed on Sunday feels almost more hypocritical than like this great promotion of faith. So that line about Chick-fil-A feels on point for where the Kanye character is at this point in his relationship with religion. And then On God operates in a similar manner, where it starts off in this very positive way that seems like what you'd expect from somebody that is this practicing and deeply religious Christian. And he's talking about, accepting him as your Lord and Savior, and thou shalt not love thy neighbor, not divide. His light shine the brightest in the dark. Single mothers know they got my heart. All very positive. But then you start going into materialism. He bought a ranch. He's talking about he had horses in the garage, meaning he had these fancy ass cars that had all this horsepower. Talks about the Forbes cover because he's making so much money. he was chasing statues and he's won Grammys and he declares himself the best artist alive, and then talks about how 350s are selling so much and the IRS is taking so much money. Like, I could understand why somebody's just thinking, what the fuck is this? Why is he talking about any of this? Like, this is a gospel album? How is this gospel? But he's showing the superficiality that he was part of his faith and part of how he viewed religion at that point. And it's important that he eventually builds up to this idea that he's charging such high prices because he can't let his family starve, which I think a lot of people have pointed out is ridiculous, right? He has so much money. So the idea that if he charged $200 for Yeezys rather than $220 or $300, that he would end up going broke and his family starving is just, what? No, not at all. So then what's that mean, that that's the final line of the song? Is it just Kanye being lazy and being thoughtless? But then you look at the very next song is called Everything We Need. And this idea that God is going to give you everything that you need, that you already have it, so you don't have to worry. Like, this right here is Kanye worrying about what will happen and not trusting in God to give him what he needs. And that fear is causing him to still have that disconnect in his day-to-day life, right? So then Everything You Need is the tipping point, right? Like, this is the change in attitude. This is the change in spirit. You look at the lyrics, and they're not many, but all the lyrics that are here really deal with moving on from a certain mindset and perspective. Like, you look at the first verse, and Kanye says, switch your attitude. Go ahead, level yourself up. This, that different latitude. So he's on a different level now. He's changed his attitude from what it was before. Instead of thinking he has to charge these prices and do all these things to feed his family, he's realizing, like, no, I just need to trust in God. I need to switch up my attitude. I don't have to be so combative about everything and so defensive. God is going to take care of me. I can just have my faith and be a good vessel for him. And that idea gets expressed in the chorus. We began after the storm inside. So there was a storm inside that was complicating everything for Kanye, but now that the storm has passed, he can begin to really serve God. And the next song is Water. Water is typically in art associated with rebirth, purification. It's that way as well in a lot of religions. The baptism ceremony, which is a sign of joining a church or membership into Christianity. Part of the ritual showing that you're dedicating yourself to God involves dipping somebody in water or pouring water over their head as part of a cleansing or purification ceremony or ritual. So the fact that immediately after the change in attitude is described, he has a song called Water, which is in itself then serving as a kind of baptism. And you even have the storm may come, but we'll get through it because of your love. So this is post-storm. And now whatever storms may come, whatever complications, he just has the faith that God's love is going to be the thing that brings him through the storm. And you have Kanye just saying, like, flow through us, heal the bruises, clean the music, use us, please help, please heal, please forgive. This is much more the kind of devotional surrender that you expect from a lot of gospel and a lot of, I think, traditional religion and Christianity, as opposed to what we're hearing on Sella and Closed on Sundays and On God, which tended to be much more of this false faith or complicated faith where God was in service to Kanye rather than Kanye being in service to God. And now, because that dynamic is switched, you're hearing the change in language from the first half of the album to this half of the album, to where Kanye's not really even concerned with himself anymore, but is just asking for God's grace and God's help to just bring him through everything. And that is how he's feeling after this baptism, right? So you move from that then to God is. And God is very much, again, in that traditionally devotional way where Kanye is in service to God. You go back to On God, and that first part that felt very positive before it broke down into ego, you don't get the ego occurring on this song at all. It's just worship Christ with your best of portions. I know I won't forget all he's done. He's the strength. Every time I look up, I see God's faithfulness. Everybody, I will tell the whole world is healed. I will tell to the whole world is healed. King of kings, Lord of lords, all the things he has in store, from rich to the poor, all are welcome through the door. He has opened up my vision, given me a revelation. Jesus brought a revolution. All the captives are forgiven. It's just pure praise. Kanye's removed himself entirely from the song, aside from just saying, this is my kids in my crib, this is my wife, this is my life. Before it was about, keeping your kids off Instagram and have to save them from vipers and be aware of temptations. And now it's just, I have faith in God, and this is all the things that I care about, and thank you, Jesus. And before, he was talking about fighting everybody, right? Like, I'm a soldier, this is war, don't step onto my land or else. But at the end of this song, it's just, thank you, Jesus won the fight. Like, there is no struggle, there is no battle. Like, the fight's already won. So there's really a sense of peace that's on this song that was completely missing from the front half of the album. And then you go to Hands On, and Hands On is putting the faith into practice while also asking for forgiveness. So Kanye is aware of the fact that he's coming to Christianity having lived a sinful life and that there's doubt from people. But he points out the fact that Christians have been the first ones to judge him and judge him so harshly, and that there's some hypocrisy there. As in Mark something, what is it? Here we go. Mark 16:18. The Bible says they will pick up snakes with their hands, and if they drink any deadly poison, it will not harm them. They will lay their hands on the sick, and they will be made well. The idea of laying hands on somebody has been tied to prayer and hope and healing for a long time, whether somebody is physically, mentally, or spiritually ill. It's part of the Christian religion to pray for them, to help them, rather than just reject them outright or gatekeep them, or a lot of the things that people have been doing to Kanye in their doubt of his faith since the beginning of 2019. Now we're almost a year into it, and people are still skeptical of what he's doing. Christians are still skeptical of what he's doing. So this song ends up really looking into this dynamic that Kanye wants to be prayed for because he wants to heal, he wants to join the community, where on the early parts of the album, he was about his own. He was willing to walk alone. He was willing to be the one-man army of a soldier that's fighting everybody for God. But at this point, he's acknowledging that he has flaws, and he's asking others to please pray for me, and not just pray for me, but make me one of your own, because I am one of your own. And also calling out the hypocrisy is his attempt to also help improve people and give them an opportunity to practice Christianity to the best of their ability, right? Rather than rejecting him. Like, this is a chance to express your faith in a good way and help somebody that's wanting to be helped. So that's where Hands On is coming from, and the idea of Hands On. And then you get Use This Gospel, which has such a cool moment, because with this idea of making amends and forgiveness, Kanye on Use This Gospel has Pusha T and No Malice. Pusha and Malice had famously been the duo known as Clips from 1992 up until 2010. And in 2010, they announced they were going to make solo albums, but had it officially broken up. And it wasn't until 2014 that they said, yeah, we've been done, with Malice actually going as far to say that there will never be another Clips album again. And the two of them haven't appeared on a track together since 2010. Like, it wasn't a pretty breakup, I guess. And Malice had actually, like Mace, and Kanye, become very religious, which is one of the things that maybe had split him and Pusha T up. I actually don't know enough about that. So if you do, please correct me on that. But he had a huge turn to Christianity and is still practicing to this day. So the idea of having Pusha and Malice on a song is huge. I mean, so many people were talking about, like, Kanye has Clips reuniting on this song. And maybe you could have started the album with this. Maybe it could have been a midpoint. But it's fitting that it comes at the end, as Kanye talks about using the gospel to heal and to defend and to be this thing that protects you. It also is this thing that can unite people that have been divided and separated. He's in this way putting his hands on Pusha T and Malice. And you have Pusha kind of embodying still a negative attitude, similar to Kanye's at the first part of the album, to where he's saying some praise, but his verse ends with, "They all say they real till it's time to appraise it. I seen them come and go, you only the latest," which could as much talk about somebody's rap career as their faith. And he says, "But who am I to judge? I'm crooked as Vegas." He still feels that he's damaged, that he's complicated, that he's in this negative space. And you get Malice starting off his verse with, "A lot of damaged souls. I done damaged those." Just this idea of acknowledging that there are people that are damaged. And he ends his verse with saying, "Just hold on to your brother when his faith is lost." And, you know, Malice and Pusha T had been brothers, and then they divide. So for him to have that line, it's not just coincidence, especially in the wake of Pusha having a doubtful, hesitant line at the end of his verse. So it's like Pusha's kind of embodying the fact that he was hesitant, and Malice is embodying the fact that he had assisted in damaging souls, maybe acknowledging the rift between he and Pusha. But at this point, you know, you just have to hold on to your brother when faith is lost. And it's through using this gospel here in this song that these two can be reunited. So while just taking away the context of their relationship, the verses themselves kind of talk about healing somebody and helping somebody. That gets expressed when you know the context of these two, and that them coming together on this song is this huge moment for the two of them. And just goes to show Kanye being in service and practicing Christianity and practicing bringing two people together through God in this project. And how do they come together? Through music. And it's kind of fitting then that you have on the song this alarm sound that is there at the very beginning and persists all the way through the chorus and the verse and the second chorus and Malice's verse. But as soon as Malice says that line, "Just hold on to your brother when his faith lost," the alarm sound goes away, and the Kenny G saxophone dominates the rest of the track. And that to me just kind of embodies this idea that God's power is expressed through music and is expressed through song, through art. And here you had these two guys at odds kind of dealing with each other and trying to work through it. And when they finally use the gospel, what occurs is this beautiful music that washes away any of the tension. And you just have this beautiful interlude with the saxophone until you get back to the end of the song. And there's still more work to do at the end, but it's after this moment of catharsis through the saxophone that we get Jesus is Lord. And one of the cool things about Jesus is Lord, looking at the linear development, the continuity that happens on the album, is at no other point on the album do you have a saxophone, right? And now you finally have it at the end of Use This Gospel. And on the very next track, you have a tuba, a trumpet, a trombone, a saxophone, all playing. So the solo brass instrument now in the very next song, after this faith has been restored or has been expressed, now carries on more brass instruments. So what was individual becomes orchestral, which is really a cool development and very fulfilling in the sense of the album opens with a choir, and the choir says at the end of every hour, in the refrain of every hour, we need you, we need you, we need you. Sing every hour, every minute, every second, sing each and every millisecond, we need you. And the we need you could be as much about needing God as it is we need each and every voice to join in to bring the power of God down till the power of the Lord comes down. So Jesus is Lord is Kanye finally, after going on this journey, adding his voice to the choir. He's an individual, but now he's joining the community. That's really cool to me. And that concept as a whole might not appeal to everybody. It might not be as interesting to some people as other concepts, but I think having that concept and executing it as well as he does on this album throughout the whole thing, where every line on it drives home the intent of that song and builds the characterization that's necessary for that moment that adds to the story. It just makes the album, I think, so well done and refined and beautiful that it's up there with every other Kanye project. I mean, that can vary person to person just because tastes vary. But I hope people kind of stop with the idea that the album's objectively bad or objectively less than or not as deep as other projects. It's still doing all the stuff that most of us love about Kanye's albums in terms of balancing this epic production with really thoughtful content. It's just thoughtful content in a way that differs from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy or College Dropout, and is more in line with what we've been seeing on Yeezus and The Life of Pablo, Ye, and Kids See Ghosts. So if you like that more literary style that Kanye's been doing, then Jesus is King is such a great next step in evolution in how Kanye has been developing that literary voice and building more minimalist projects over time. But if you're not into that at all, yeah, this is going to be problematic for you. But I hope understanding the concept and learning about the concept helps in some ways with appreciating the album more and realizing that it might not be for you, but it's not excessively trash either, and why other people might like it a bit more. So if you have any questions based on that, let me know. If you have any criticisms of it, okay, let me know. But thanks for sticking around for 30 minutes. This is a long video. I've had a lot I wanted to say about this and hadn't been able to, so I appreciate you listening. The best way to help the channel, if you want to help, is just liking, subscribing, commenting. All of those things drive up the per episode revenue. So yeah, if you want to do any of those things, much appreciated. Otherwise, just keep watching, and every click on this article also gets me paid. So if you want to click on that too, much appreciated. Otherwise, stay wavy, keep it loopy, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.